Before we get started, just a quick note, spoiler alert.
And we are adults, and I will try very hard not to use adult language, but this is the warning.
Hello, welcome to episode 5 of Last Library on the Left, which is the first part of a 2-part series. My name is Jennifer.
And I'm Sadina. We're a horror review and discussion podcast where we talk about horror in books, movies, and other formats, why we seek it out, and why we need it in our lives.
Today we're going to be talking about Lovecraft Country.
It was developed by Misha Green.
It was released in 2020 on HBO Max, and it is based on the book of the same name, Lovecraft Country, by Matt Ruff. And before we get into anything else, I've got a statement. Without getting too deep or political, I just want to say that I've seen discrimination and racism in action. I've experienced it, not to the extent of any of the character representations or what many humans today experience. With that said, Black Lives Matter, love is love, and no human deserves to be criminalized strictly based off of their race, ethnicity, gender, orientation, and so on and so forth. I'd also like to say that kindness is everything, and your mental health is very important.
Yes, we wanted to get this out of the way fairly early in the podcast series because we don't want listeners to accuse us of political soapboxing or not being entertained. We are not entertainers.
No.
We are 9-to-5 workers. We are humans that have other things in our life that we do. So we owe nothing to anybody about keeping it unbiased, whatever. That being said, we could never do full justice to this episode and the part B that will inevitably come from it. But my thing is that I don't believe in political alignment. I believe that I have the wherewithal as a full grown ass woman to make thoughts and opinions and to grow and change over time. But I also know that no matter where I stand in life, that if there is any moment when I stand with a political party, with a group, whatever, that also has support from the Nazi or KKK groups, I will immediately change my stance. There is no way in the world I would ever align myself with those people because even if I wasn't Jewish, I just want to put that out there. Even if I was not Jewish and even if my family had not suffered at the hands of the Holocaust and the way that we did, I would still never allow myself to put an opinion, let's be honest here, an opinion over the fact that they are terrible human beings. I would never allow it. So keep that in mind. Got a little hot, sorry. Keep that in mind when you listen to us going in the future, but especially in this episode, that we are not entertainers, we are not unbiased, and that this episode is going to get into some very deep topics. And if you are upset by that, or if you're like, well, I'm a such and such, and I'm not a terrible person, if you are aligned with a group that does not outright denounce Nazism, white supremacy, the system that I also benefit from, you're part of the problem. Complacency is complacency. If you see something, say something, all those cliches, that goofy, tropey stuff applies here because human rights are not a political stance. Human rights are not a political opinion. They are a fact, and they are a fact that not everybody benefits from.
Yeah.
All right. All of that out of the way.
Before we get started, I want to thank everyone who's given us a 5-star rating. We really appreciate it. We're just really happy that you like us.
Yeah, we're happy, also anxious, because when you're doing something right, you can only do it wrong.
Right?
And as someone who edits the audio, I'm constantly fearful that, I don't know, anxiety's a thing, people. And there's also, ironically, a lot of anxiety with this particular episode.
Yeah.
And so it's funny that we're going to talk about the anxiety of having 5-star ratings.
Yeah.
Shout out to Rena, who I know gave us one, or thinks she gave us one. She's pretty sure. And Vero, who screenshot when she gave us one, and I told her I was anxious, and it was not because you rated us. Vero, you know that. It was because now I can only fall. So thanks. And also for our first email. Our first email is from friend Amanda, and this is her response to episode 2, where we talked about boundaries and horror. Oh, by the way, I got Amanda's permission.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda. Amanda writes, "Ladies, I love psychological horror the most, and I can handle gore to an extent, but I cannot do torture scenes. Not sure why. I don't have an issue with blood, as long as it's not my own, and there's nothing in my past that would make it triggering. I guess it just makes me squeamish. In fact, now that I think about it, it's not just the physical horrors happening to the victim, but the state of mind of the torturer. If it's direct revenge, I get it. That's one thing. But if it's random, casual, how god-awful, batshit crazy does one have to get in order to repeatedly jam a knife in someone's gut who's tied to a chair, or carve out their eyeball, or under the fingernail thing? God, I can't take that. Okay, now I'm scaring myself, so I'm going to go. Love the podcast." Yeah, no, Amanda, I get that. I watched the first Saw, really liked it. You ain't gonna pay me to watch Human Centipede.
Same. Now, there are movies that I will watch. There's a movie that I like called The Collection and the Collector. And
right.
we're going to talk about it one day. But it's straight gore, I don't want to say it's torture, but it's disgusting. And I kind of think to myself, why do you like this so much? But I love it. We get it, Amanda. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, thank you for sharing. And I know that Rena also answered on Instagram about her horror. So I don't really need your permission to share that, I guess. Like, our Instagram is public. I'm sorry, Rena, if you didn't want people to know, but Rena agreed that possession and that type gets her too. She blames my mom's house for that, though.
Oh, I remember seeing that comment.
Yeah, she told me that the stories I brought back to the squad about my mom's house haunting us really got to her. It made the boundary more solid in her mind.
They freak me out a little bit too, I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, that's fair. Y'all, by the way, my apartment also has got a haunted oven, so, I don't know what's going on. Whatever, it's fine.
And the haunted oven is not even the first of the haunted stuff, okay? I'm just gonna lay that out.
Yeah, they're all fire related, too.
Right, because there was a candle.
Yeah. Okay.
Back to the topic at hand.
Yes.
Again, we just want to state that we know that we're not going to do justice to this series. It was a great series. There's so much to cover, and we recommend you watch it. Just give it a shot. It's going to make you really uncomfortable, but watch it.
Yeah, it's not only going to make you really uncomfortable, but watch it. And on HBO Max, they have the podcast episodes where they break down the episodes later. And because we don't have the right, Jennifer and I, don't have the right scope to truly dissect and discuss the topics in Lovecraft Country, I highly recommend looking for Opinions While Black. Oz and Dee Randall talk about the episodes and their podcast as they released and their reactions to watching them. That's also within the realm of Nothing About Us Without Us.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Jennifer and I can't honor that, partly because of the pandemic. The two of us being together is already kind of a stretch, but we're already always together anyway.
Right.
So we can't really ask other people to compromise their situations for our podcast.
Right, yeah. It's too much to ask for someone right now.
Right. But I did want to give resources out there to do further research, since we can't provide the correct lens to view this through.
Right. I'll never be able to. And for those that don't know, because I know my voice doesn't give it away, I am...
I never thought about that.
I didn't think about it. So I'm Canadian born, but my parents are from the Caribbean and I'm of Indian descent. So I can somewhat relate, but not completely relate.
Well, you have a very specific thing that you can relate to, and I can't wait to get to that in the episode, because it's a fascinating but shocking aspect. Because colorism is not just in the Black community.
Right.
Colorism, I knew that it existed in Asian communities, but like Eastern Asian communities?
Yeah.
I don't think I really thought a lot about it in Central Asian communities.
Like, according to the caste system, those that are the lower caste are like the working people, so they're out in the sun working. So of course they would have darker skin because they're out in the sun, whereas those that are lighter skin are usually inside, not working as hard as those of the lower caste. But you're definitely defined as more beautiful the lighter you are, which is just
weird.
insane.
Anyway, that's a whole other thing. So we'll touch more on that later in the episode. As we go through the series, we're going to tackle this a little differently than we have in the past. We are going to do the first 5 episodes. For those who have a keen eye or are hyper analytical like me, you may have noticed that each episode had a theme or historical event that it touched on.
Yeah.
As we go through the episodes, I will discuss the more obvious themes, and then the ones that were sort of hidden in the background that were kind of nods to the culture. And honestly, these are just the ones I saw.
Right.
So I'm sure I'm missing a lot of references. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of things. The only thing that gave me the edge here as a white Jewish girl who grew up in the South is that I'm a history major. So I have the analytical mind of a history major, and that was what I viewed this through. So maybe this will come off a little dry, and if that does, I'm sorry.
I felt a lot of these episodes, so we've already planned an episode where we talk about how we interpret horror, and this definitely shows how differently we interpret this series, because I interpreted just like feelings.
That being said, now we can go through the cast. Jonathan Majors played Atticus, or Tick. Journey Smollett played Letitia, or Letty. Courtney B. Vance plays Uncle George. Ajanou Ellis plays Hippolyta Freeman. Side note, Hippolyta is not the Greek way of saying Hippolyta. So I had actually a pretty in-depth conversation and debate with David about the proper way of pronouncing Hippolyta when he was writing something else for work. And he pronounced it as Hippolyta. And I was like, you mean Hippolyta? And he was like, no, it's Hippolyta because that's how they pronounced it in Greek. And I was like, well, Hippolyta is the way I've always heard it. And I don't know where I got that origination from, but it's pronounced Hippolyta in the series. And I just thought that was an interesting break away from the very white Greek enunciation. All right. Jada Harris as Diana Freeman, Michael K. Williams as Montrose Freeman, Wunmi Masaku plays Ruby Baptiste, Abby Lee Kershaw plays Christina, John Hudson Odom plays Sammy, Jamie Chung plays Jia, and Jamie Newman plays Hillary.
Did you know that Jamie Chung was also on, is it The Real World on MTV?
What?
I love giving you these little...
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I never watched The Real World, but...
that's where she started.
What? Let's revisit The Real World part. That's a little,
She was a cast member on The Real World.
But, like, isn't Real World a reality show?
Yeah, where they're all picked to live together in the house, yeah.
But she's an actress.
Now.
Okay, so...
But there are a bunch of people that were on The Real World that have gone on to do other things. Like, there's a wrestler who was on The Real World. His name is The Miz. Yes, The Miz.
What?
Yes!
I thought The Real World was just some trashy reality show like The Bachelor.
I mean, it was, but there are people that have gone on to do stuff. There's a couple that was on one of the earlier seasons, and they are conservative Republicans. Like, he's in office, the husband.
Okay.
Sorry,
wow.
I didn't give that to you.
I mean, it's like completely rewritten how I view reality shows. I thought that these people just came into existence to be a 10-minute hot topic and then like went back into the ether to their Iowa farm or wherever it was that they got plucked from because they're a cookie cutter cutout from white America.
No!
You blew my mind.
Second time.
Yeah. Also, I'm really sorry if you found any of those comments offensive, but I'm not a reality show watcher. Never have been.
I love trashy reality shows.
It just never. Okay, we can pause for just a moment. Okay, step back. I just want to say the other reason why I'm so shell-shocked is because Jimmy Chung was phenomenal.
Oh yeah, she's phenomenal. So then when I saw her again, like, of course her looks kind of changed a little bit because she's like, a little bit more glamorous to me in Lovecraft. But I was like, oh yes, the girl from Real World.
Wow. My brain is having a hard time making those two entities exist.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen Real World, so this faceless entity that is also Jamie Chung, but is now also Jia, which was such an amazing role. And
I
like
know.
So, like to make those two people exist.
Does not compute.
Yeah, my brain's like, but are you sure?
Yeah.
Like, should we Google this? Like, are you sure?
I'm gonna send you so many things.
Oh my god. Okay.
I like to drop these knowledge bombs on you every now and again.
Wow. What were we doing?
I don't know.
Right, okay. Okay, whatever. We're back.
Episode 1.
Yes, episode 1. The two major historical elements of episode 1 that, for the most part, were sundown towns and the Green Book. The Green Book was written as a guide through sundown towns or how to avoid them, because when Route 66 connected most of America, it was during a time when the middle-class family had the means and the time to drive across the country as a whimsical family vacation. But the Black community could not safely partake that.
Yeah.
So in order to...
as safely as they can.
Yeah, as safely as they could replicate the white American dream experience, the Green Book was developed to help Black families safely traverse the American roads. Yeah. Which... also, you still sort of need in some places. We ain't gonna out nobody in Louisiana, but there's some Louisiana towns where, okay, confession, I've got family in Louisiana, and one of the first times after we moved down here to Houston from Memphis that we went to go visit my uncle in DeRidder, which, fun fact, has the most churches per capita than any other place in the country. Yeah. Terrifying.
Yeah, that's scary.
We stopped at a gas station, and my mom was like, all right, we gotta stop now. Anybody have to, like, use the restroom, blah, 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 because we're not stopping again for a little bit. And I was like, why? And she said, because your Uncle Mimi told me that there's a town we're not allowed to drive through. And I was like, what? And she told me, yeah, Jewish people are not welcome in this town, and if they find out we're Jewish, if we stopped and were to get something at a gas station, they saw your star, we'd be in danger. We'd be run out of the town, at best. And I was 7. That is some scary shit to hear at 7.
Yeah.
So the Green Book, sundown towns, very real things during the time frame of this show. Still very much a real thing now.
Yes, very much so. There are places where we live that I wouldn't go to. And I've lived in America my whole entire life.
There's a couple of other things. There's 2 famously known Black individuals. James Baldwin, a lot of his works are spoken over quite a bit of the series. It's the first time you hear it here in episode 1. There's also a recreation of a Gordon Parks photo from the 1937 flood relief in somewhere in Middle America. Gordon Parks was famous for his photography showing the gap between middle-class America white and middle-class America Black. Those were the major aspects that stood out to me.
So in episode 1, just a very brief rundown, we open up with Atticus, which before we even open up to him, we get this like sci-fi scene, and I'm just gonna tell you right now.
Dream sequence?
Yeah, like a dream sequence. Jackie Robinson is there. Jamie Chung's character is there, and I'm just like, no, this is not for me, because I'm not really a sci-fi person. But
it was also very War of the Worlds, and it was trippy.
Yeah, it was really trippy.
It's funny because that scene started, I was like, oh, we're just jumping in. All right, cool. Like, let me buckle up. I'm ready.
See, I was like, should I really be watching this show? Like, this is not me. I have not read anything by Lovecraft at all. I'm not interested in it. I'm not interested in that far out sci-fi. Let me just put it that way. It's beyond my scope of understanding, I guess. Maybe I just don't want to dedicate the time to understand it.
Well, that type of sci-fi, that like existential dread, space operatic type, yeah, it's a different type of sci-fi.
Yeah, it's not for me. So when I saw that opening sequence, I was like, yeah, maybe this isn't the show for me, but I pushed on. We finally get into Atticus, or Tick, and he's reading a sci-fi novel. He's a Korean War vet, and he's on his way home to Chicago. We also meet George, Uncle George, his wife Hippolyta, their daughter Diana, and we find out that Atticus has come home because he got a letter from his dad, Montrose. His dad is in Artem, and he says something about his family line, and he's
like he discovered something about his family line?
Yeah, and that there's something that Tick is owed, and so Tick wants to find his dad. We also get to meet Ruby and Letty, who are half-sisters, and there's very clear tension between the two. You kind of get the sense that Ruby is the more responsible sister, Letty is the one that's kind of off doing adventures or whatever the hell she wants to do.
Letty feels very like the liberated woman.
Yeah.
You know? She's also, you meet her first, she's wearing pants.
Yeah, she's wearing pants.
Ruby's wearing a dress.
Yeah, Ruby's wearing a dress. And Ruby's wearing a really long dress, too, and I don't think her dresses ever get any shorter.
And Ruby is very, compared to Letty, she seems very steadfast. Very level-headed.
Very level-headed. She wants to get a job at a department store, and that's her dream, whereas Letty's just kind of like fly by night almost. So Letty, Ruby, and Tick are childhood childhood friends. And Letty and Tick talk about what Tick is about to do. He wants to go find his dad. He's going to Artem, which Montrose labeled as Lovecraft Country.
Yeah.
So, which I was like, oh, look at that.
But you know what? That had to have been a slur against Tick's family because Montrose did not like Lovecraft.
Yes.
Specifically because he was racist.
Yeah. So definitely, I think it was like a FU to Lovecraft himself.
Yeah. Also, the family, they are super readers.
Yes, they are. The daughter writes comic books. Hippolyta is very clear that she is smart.
Yes.
So George writes their version of the Green Book. So George writes it and he travels for this book and he publishes it. And every now and again, Hippolyta, she gets to write stuff. And she says that her passages are always better received than what is hers. Which, girl, yes.
Yeah, she seems like she's a little put off that she doesn't get to travel as much as him.
Yeah.
And that she doesn't get to invest as much of herself in it as she would like to. I felt for Hippolyta real early in the series. She looked like she felt left out of the adventure.
Yeah, because Tick and George decide that they're gonna go. Letty tags along because obviously she's not getting along with her sister. So they head out on this adventure and leave Diana and Hippolyta at home. And so as they're going on the adventure, they go into a diner. And the diner is perceived to have been safe because it was in the Green Book at one point. When they get in, they realize...
Oh, Letty realizes right off the bat.
Yeah, it's not safe for African Americans. And George is like, well, you know what? We're gonna go ahead and sit down anyways.
Because I didn't have a problem here last time.
Right. And Letty goes to the restroom. Who's on the phone?
It's
one of the waiters?
Yeah, one of the waiters, the dude that's behind the counter.
Yeah. Letty goes to the restroom. She realizes that he's calling in for reinforcements.
He's not, though. He's calling in because he's scared.
Oh, that's right.
He's real scared. That kid is nervous.
Yeah,
he's basically apologetic, too. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm real sorry. Like, I tried to kind of let them know that this isn't the place for them. He's like, but they won't leave, and I just wanted you to know, like, this was not my decision. He does this whole thing, and he's, because he was afraid for himself, because he knew what was about to happen, but he was afraid. It sounded like he was more afraid if he didn't call.
Right, yeah. Which he had to call them. Man, okay. We have thoughts. That's the running phrase in our podcast. We have thoughts.
Yeah. Girl, I got feelings.
Yeah. So, again, very clear that they are in danger. They run out of that diner. They haul ass.
Oh yeah, Letty's like, get up, we gotta go.
And she doesn't move a beat. She is running and she's yelling. And so they're being chased down. I can't remember if this was a sundown town or not.
It was a sundown town because on their way out of the town, there's one of those super great, well-written, articulated horseshit mother. Let me calm down. Yeah. It basically says, don't be caught here after sundown, ... understood. With that false southern charm. Oh, we're doing you a favor. This is for your man, what? Okay.
Yeah. So they run out. They're being chased. And all of a sudden, this mystery car comes out of nowhere and kind of
hauling ass.
Yeah. And it inserts itself in between the trio and the people that they're being chased by. And you see this woman emerge out of it. She's just kind of watching them and she's helping them. You don't know why. Eventually, Letty, George, and Tick get lost in the woods. Do they encounter the policeman there?
Yeah. And the cop is all a dick about it. Like, are you lost? Do you need help getting out of here? It's real close to sundown.
Yeah.
I got 6 minutes or whatever it was.
Yeah.
They pull open the Farmer's Almanac to see what time the sun sets. He was gonna, down to the second, tell these people when their literal deadline was.
Yeah. And night falls and they encounter two types of monsters. So they encounter racist monsters and actual monsters, the Shoggoths, which don't seem quite as bad compared to the racist guys.
Yeah, I gotta tell y'all, the amorphous blobs of multiple eyes and claws chasing them down in a dark forest was not nearly as distressing as the diner phone call.
It was not. And the end of the episode 1 kind of goes through them surviving the night. And the Shoggoths get a couple of the cops.
Boo-hoo.
Yeah. And as they're trying to make their way out of the woods and surviving...
Letty, by the way, was fast as hell. That's when you find out that Letty's a runner.
Yeah. Man! So they survived the night, the three of them.
Which the cops made it sound like it was their job to help the cops survive, too.
I know! All of a sudden they needed help, but it's like, you guys were just about to lynch these people.
Right.
So anyways, The episode ends with them arriving at Artem. They're literally looking at the mansion. And I have thoughts about this episode. It's very clear that the creators are going to be in our face with all of the racism. They're not shying away from it, which I think, I think it's good, because I think normal shows that we've seen, they kind of hint at things. I can't imagine being a white person being cast in one of those roles and having to, like, they're saying the N-word.
Girl, not only that, but their faces convey such vitriol.
Yeah. Ugh. I'm just so uncomfortable.
Yes. And I guess I should say that that's, okay, first, everybody in this, they acted their butts off.
Yeah.
They are phenomenal. I was in love with everyone. But that is also an interesting point, because to convey such hate, physically, verbally, with their body, I hated those white people in this show.
Oh my god, anytime a white person came on the screen, I was just like,
what foolery are you gonna do now?
Yeah, I just kept thinking, like, oh, how much worse can this get?
Right, like, what are you gonna do to stoke it? Like, how are you gonna make it so much worse?
Yeah, it was just, I felt uncomfortable, I felt disgusted. This is episode 1, and like I said, the creators, they don't shy away from it at all. It is in your face, and you have to confront that uncomfortable feeling, which I never got over. I just feel uncomfortable.
I just kept getting mad.
Yeah, I just felt really uncomfortable, because I just, in my mind, I kept thinking about the actors, what it felt like to portray a racist, even if maybe you probably weren't, but maybe you kind of are.
You know, I just want to say that it sounds like I went with the ride and was bought in for the ride and was angry, whereas you were like hyper analytical.
I know!
The actors would be like swapped.
I just kept thinking about the actors and the actresses, and I kept thinking like about Journey Smollett. You know, she was on the Cosby Show, and so I just kept thinking about her and think, she was on Full House too. I just kept thinking about what it felt like to have to confront that, because you're already confronting it in everyday life, but to confront what your ancestors had to do. Oh, I just kept thinking about it. It just kept making me so uncomfortable, and it just, anger, disgust, fear, all those feelings, I felt them. But I did write down a note for Hippolyta and Ruby, because I was immediately drawn to the two of them. And I wrote down that they're both very limited, and I felt sorry for them, but they're also limitless if given the chance. And,
yes.
you know.
Which we'll see later.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we won't see that in this episode when we talk about it, because all of Ruby, well, actually, you know what? That's not true. We come to terms with Ruby's limitlessness in this episode. Well, our podcast episode.
Yeah.
We don't get to discover just how limitless Hippolyta is until part 2.
Yeah.
But we hope you all hold out for that, because Hippolyta, man, she's someone to be reckoned with.
Oh my god, I can't wait. Oh, buddy, I want to be here for Halloween.
Right? Hippolyta just, okay, dang. There's so much I want to say about Hippolyta.
But we're going to go on to episode 2 now. Well, did you have any other thoughts about episode 1?
My big thoughts for episode 1 were all of the historical references.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just because I have a very dry history mind, but also very much going for the ride. I was not concerned with these white people playing these races. I was like, man, I'm going to smack you if I see you in person.
Yes. Listen, that sheriff who was trying to run him out of the town, if I ever saw him in real life, I would give him a talking to.
It was his degrading and patronizing language of, I mean, y'all got 6 minutes. Do you think you can make it? And down to the second. It was so hateful and so arrogant.
And the fact that he did it with a smile.
Yes. And that was because he had the arrogance to know that he had the authority behind. Oh, no. No.
It was disgusting.
All right. So the second episode is titled Whitey's on the Moon, but it's also a poem by Gil Scott Heron, which was performed spoken word. I think I listened to that recording initially in an undergrad class. It was a literature class, and we were looking at spoken word poetry. I'm not a big poetry fan, but spoken word poetry, when the creator of the art performs the art for you, there is nothing like it. It hits you in your soul on a different level.
Yeah.
Also, that poem was phenomenal.
It really was. And the way they did it in the show, oh god, just let's talk about it after. Go ahead.
Okay. At the end of the episode, there is a nod to the concept of burn the master's house down, which some slaves did during times of revolt, and there was not great consequences.
Right.
It felt very good to see happen at the end of this episode. We'll talk about that as we get to it. But the other parallels were the Freemason type society versus Uncle George also was part of a Freemason type society called the Prince Hall Freemasons, which were were Freemasons that were a branch of the Freemasons because Prince Hall was not welcome because he was a man of color. And so he developed his own branch. The other thing is that the Sons of Adam is I think Christina even says it in the episode. She says the Braithwaites would have never been associated with the KKK because they were poor. And it's like, damn, like the Sons of Adam is just like KKK for rich people. It's a political fundraiser. You buy your plate at the table.
Yeah.
But they're also apparently based, and we'll get back to this in episode 4, they're based on a real, not just the KKK, they're based on a real group from Yale called the Skull and Bones, the Order. There's like 3 secret societies at Yale alone, y'all. But the Skull and Bones, quote unquote, the Order is a secret order. And they racist as fuck too.
Oh my god.
But that's who the Sons of Adam are kind of being paralleled to.
Oh, wow.
Because there's some stuff about the Sons of Adam that in episode 4, when we get into it, parallels rumors or things that are assumed by the Order.
Oh my god!
From Yale. I just want to say that again, y'all. Yale. In Connecticut. From the beginnings of our nation.
Oh my god.
And for all those people, racism isn't real, it's not institutional. Man, let me tell y'all, not only is it institutional, but it is in the veins of this country to run it.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
You blew my mind there. Holy crap.
Yeah. Girl, do yourself a favor. Don't read about Skull and Bones or the three other. There's a couple other societies, secret societies at Yale alone. There's like ones at Harvard too. The whole Ivy League persona and mask is, y'all, it's hiding some problematic stuff.
Disgusting. Like, just like, I
feel
feels
like, good. Is this what you feel like?
Yeah. I'm just like, my mind is really blown. There's 2 mind blowns today. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, shake it off. Shake it off.
Episode 2. We're at Artem, and the trio, as I will likely call them, they are welcomed with open arms by this character, William. And Tick is still very much on high alert. They're welcomed into the house. They're given rooms, told to change and everything. But Letty and George are sort of taken in with the house.
Letty for sure. I feel like George is, let's go with the flow.
Yeah.
Let's see what's going to happen. Like, he sounds like he's understanding Tick's suspicions.
Yeah.
But he's like, I mean, they're not chasing us out with fire and pitchforks yet.
And he's got books.
Yeah, he's got books.
Yeah, each room is sort of tailored to the person. Like, all the clothes that Letty tries on fits her, like,
yeah, Tick is like, don't you find that weird?
Yeah, and she's just like, I love it! But also, Letty and George forget what happened to them with the Shoggoths, which is weird.
Yeah, but that was, I mean, you find out later, that's magic. The magic part was such a not subtle way to say KKK. The Grand Dragons and the Wizards and I was like, no, we'd never be associated with the KKK because they're poor, but we're still wizards.
Yeah. They have lunch before they go out into this little village, and during the lunch, I think Tick brings it to their attention that they're being watched. Or maybe it's George, but one of them points out that they're being watched, and they decide to just go ahead and finish their lunch and go to the village, where they meet some lady. I'm not going to give her name because she just pissed me off. She was so rude. She's rude, she's disgusting. She talks about black bears and how they have to be put down, and how she's got her dogs, and
you know, they dress her up real country too.
Yeah, they do.
With that like hat and them overalls.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So as they're walking through the village, they see this tower, and George is like, I think Montrose is locked up there. As they get ready to head back to the house, they encounter another Shoggoth. But this time we meet Christina.
Who was the woman who was in that car that tried to intercept them initially.
Yeah. And she has this whistle that controls the Shoggoth, and
she's real refined looking.
Yeah, really refined looking.
Yeah.
And you find out that the whistle that she uses also controls the memory loss of George and Letty. We get back to Artem, and we get some history. I think William takes them on the tours at Christina. I can't remember, and you'll understand why later on. We get history on the founder of the lodge, whose name is Titus. It's mentioned that he was very kind-hearted, quote-unquote, with slaves.
That is coding for he raped his slaves and took favorites.
Yeah. We also meet Samuel, who is Christina's dad, and he's also being begrudgingly nice to Tick, which later we find out that Tick is actually blood related to the Braithwaites because Titus raped his ancestor. Hannah, I think her name was Hannah. We also get a glimpse into Christina's power. She magics Tick, George, and Letty in their own rooms, and they have these visions. We find out that George not only loved Hippolyta, he loved Tick's mom, and they were an item. And I think Letty has because she fantasizes about Tick, right?
Yeah.
And Tick
is with Gia.
Yeah.
But he projects, you find out later that he's basically, the way he sees Gia in this particular scene is that she is a Korean commando that is wielding a knife and they are fighting one another to the death, and he is desperately trying to get her to stop attacking him.
Yeah.
That, you find out later, is a projection of Tick's fear of Gia. Gia was not a Korean fighter.
And all the while that they're having these illusions, Christina has made it so everyone at the lodge can watch them, which is disgusting again.
You know, I find it interesting though because Christina's magic felt very natural. Whenever she performed anything, it didn't feel like she was putting on her performance.
Right.
Whereas whenever any of the other dudes did magic, it was this whole like shtick that they had to have capes and hood, whatever it was.
Yeah.
They felt very...
She was very effortless with her powers.
They were definitely a circle jerk. I'm just gonna put it like that.
Yeah.
Like, just in all honesty.
I'm just so disgusted with these people. Like, it just... Oh, God. And they're not real, but they represent very real people in our history, and it's so disgusting. Long story short, like I said, I'm not going to cover everything that happened in this episode. There's so much that happens. Each episode could be its own movie, I feel. You find out that Tick is descended from the Braithwaites, that Samuel is being nice to him because of that, and because they need him for a ceremony that they want to do, which goes to show that Tick, as a black man, is more worthy than Christina, his daughter, a white woman. I like that comes into play almost.
Well, it definitely feeds into Christina's character motives later, you discover.
They eventually find Montrose. Montrose makes his appearance, and I love the actor who played him. But while they're rescuing him, Samuel shoots George and Letty. Because of that, I think he tells Tick that he can save them if Tick agrees to the ceremony. So Tick does. They go into the ceremony, and I think Hannah intervenes, the ancestor. She burns the house down. She helps Tick escape, thereby killing a lot of the members of the lodge.
You find out later that as they were escaping, Tick saw Hannah.
Yeah, Tick saw Hannah, and he ran after her.
But Letty also saw Hannah. And I think that actually maybe it was Hannah who saved them. It's interesting. The house seems to exist, in particular in the burning down of the house in Hannah's time and in Tick's time, that it seems to exist in the same time, the same plane of existence, because Hannah was aware of Tick and Letty in her time, just as they were aware of her in theirs. So the magic of the house and the magic of maybe the ceremony had a lot of weird time warping capabilities. And like, I mean, that's when you start getting into the Lovecraft stuff though, all that like weird planes of existence and parallel stuff and portals that connect to different times and planes of existence. And
I don't want to say they opened a portal, because they were using Tick so that they can ascend into
the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, the Garden
basically.
of Eden.
But they did open a portal. Like,
and
there was that
they did because they were.
Yeah.
I think they were getting ready to walk through it when it all went to hell.
Shit.
But but how arrogant of them that it just bothers. I'm just so bothered by this episode. Like I said, again, it confronted all of my uncomfortable feelings of racism and how just like putting them on display is just so disgusting. Just so disgusting. I didn't have a lot of thoughts in this one. I just kept thinking like this was a lot that happened in episode 2.
Oh, see, I had a lot of thoughts as far as the Sons of Adam's interpretation of not only the Bible, but of their own biblical works as Sons of Adam. Which, like, if you have to write your own origin story, you probably got some explaining to do.
Yeah.
But their own biblical works and interpretations and magics and everything sort of helped justify their white supremacy.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like the Braithwaites, Christina, William, Samuel, that they weren't necessarily, they did not see themselves as racist.
Yeah.
Like a lot of modern racists, they did not think they were racist.
Yeah.
But they were willing to sacrifice black bodies for their own goals.
Yeah.
That's racist.
Yes, it's very racist. They don't see that though.
No, because their biblical interpretations reinforced their racial superiority, which like...
It's so demeaning. You know, they treated them so well when they first came into the house, and you kind of...
That false sense of security, luring them in.
It was just, oh God, like, just disgusting. And I know I'm saying that word a lot of times. You could probably do a count how many times I say that word, but it was just so despicable to see it actually in action. Because you hear about it all the time. Every now and again you see it, but to really be faced with it and see this is literally what they're doing. They know what they're doing.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no remorse. That's their end game, and that's what they're gonna do.
So the third episode, the Master's house has been burned down.
Yeah.
And they're all back in Chicago. So the big events here that have historical relevance are the Winthrop house that she purchases. When she purchased the Winthrop house, I was like, wait, I know that name. And I looked it up, and it was Winthrop Avenue in Chicago was a small block in Chicago that was a safe haven for working class Black folks. One woman did initially move in, cross that barrier, but it eventually grew into a safe space for them. Ruby warns her about purchasing a house in a white neighborhood because it was too close to Trumbull Park. And Trumbull Park was another instance in Chicago where a Black woman bought a home in a white neighborhood, and she was made to suffer in the way that good Christian white people can make you think that you're not good. I can go off on it. But these monsters use their whiteness, their Christianhood, as an excuse to literally murder and torture other human beings. Yep. And that alone, man, I hope that those Christian people believe in hell, because that's where they are. Yeah. And don't even come at me about the times. They didn't know better. Because you know what? Before my bubby died, my bubby knew her sister was a racist. My bubby was 80-something. And that was her younger sister that she helped raise. You can learn. Yeah. Sorry.
You cannot explain that away in my eyes. I'm sorry, you cannot. No. It takes a lot of work. I feel it takes a lot of research to be a good person. It's easy to believe in human rights for all. And no, you can't explain it away. And especially to use religion. Yeah. Oh, hell no. That's just a big no for me.
All right. So there's actually a couple of other historical nods that occur in this episode. There was the rough ride treatment that Letty experienced towards the middle-ish of the episode, where the cops drove her around, but like drove her erratically and she bounced back and forth. The rough ride tactic was still being practiced by police officers as recently as the 90s, y'all. That's 20 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
And it only came to a head with the death of Freddie Gray, when his neck was broken during a rough ride. There's also, of course, the big one here, the illegal medical experimentation on Black bodies, like the Tuskegee experiment, Henrietta Lacks, the immortal life of Henrietta Lacks, but also Dr. Epstein, which kind of pissed me off because Steen is like a very historically Jewish. Yeah. Dr. Epstein was likened, he basically was Dr. Mengele from the Holocaust, who would light Jewish people on fire and then see how their body took to grafts, or would cut off bits and pieces or cut out parts of their body, their organs. Illegal medical experimentation. Yeah. So the illegal medical experimentation that Dr. Epstein did in his private home was direct reflection of Dr. Mengele's medical experimentation. That's not to say that Dr. Mengele was the only one. Right. There were many instances of white doctors illegally experimenting on Black bodies for the good of science.
Or what they deem the good of science.
There's a statue of such a doctor, and I forgot his name, outside of Central Park. He's like considered the father of gynecology because he would... We're not going to go into it.
No, we're not going to go into... There's so many things that we could go into, but we're just choosing not to upset ourselves.
Yes. That was all of the ones that stuck out for me. Yeah. I'm sure I'm missing a few or more, but those were the ones that stuck out for me.
Just so angry. I'm so angry.
Yeah, I get real hyped about episode 3 too, so y'all, this is my warning.
Okay, so the official summary, Letty buys a house. Well, she purchased it with inheritance from her mom, which we find out later it was not. And so the house is in a predominantly white neighborhood, but Letty wants to renovate it and open it up and have it as a safe house for Black Americans. And I wrote it down because I thought I was being clever. Ha ha ha. And I was like, outside, Letty battles racism. Inside, she battles ghosts. I thought I was being clever.
That's cute. You're such a dork.
I'm such a dork. But yeah, because she notices a couple things early on in the house that it may be haunted. But
the boiler room.
Yeah, but definitely on the outside, dealing with the racism takes priority.
Yeah. Okay, side note, the cars were so weird to me. Okay, I don't understand cross burning because I feel like why would you burn the symbol of your own people? Right. Doesn't make any sense to me. But then the cars, leaving your car running and on just to have the noise.
Yeah.
Why?
It's stupid.
It's so stupid. Why would you do that? 1, to your machine, 2, to your gas.
Yeah.
Like,
I hope their car died.
Oh, so stupid. So stupid.
It's just the the dumbest thing.
It just doesn't make any sense.
It makes no sense. Listen, if I'm gonna annoy someone, it's gonna be in a way that I'm not bothered.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that was the thing. They're like across the street, all proud, crossing arms. We're so smart.
Yeah.
Nah, man, you're fucking up your car.
Yeah, you dummies.
Okay, anyway, I just thought that was so...
Yeah, it's just dumb.
So dumb.
But one thing I do want to mention that I did write down in my notes is that Letty has a house party, which is when we experience the car thing. But in that episode, her and Tick get together. And we find out later that Letty was a virgin. This was her first time.
Which I assumed, because in the second episode, when she was imagining Tick coming to her room, when he pulled down his pants, it was a snake.
Oh!
Yeah. Even though she wanted that physical attraction and intimacy, she, as a virgin, was fearful.
Yeah.
And she saw a trouser snake literally. And
I missed that one.
And it launched out and tried to bite her too, and it scared her. Yeah. That's when she like kind of came around to the illusion.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
I missed that. I mean, I saw the snake, but I missed it. I missed the, the symbolism.
The symbolism. Well, at first I thought the symbolism was about the apple and because of all the religious allusions in that episode. But when you find out that she's a virgin, I was like, ooh, that's what it was.
That's what it was, yeah. Well, now I know. So they get together, but after all of the stuff that's happening with the house, Letty does some research and she finds out that she is living, in fact, in the Winthrop house. That Epstein, who has died, he kidnapped and tortured 8 African Americans.
And children.
Oh
my God.
And he's still in the house. His spirit is still in the house, as well as the people that he experimented on. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that sheriff had something to do with it. The sheriff helped kidnap them, which is disgusting. But I'm not going to focus on the white people. Because they just
well, and they do that enough for themselves.
Like,
we don't
not
need
to
feed into that.
Yeah. So with the help of a Haitian priestess, Letty tries to exorcise Epstein and the tortured ghosts that are in the building.
The Haitian priestess protects the house before she even walks in.
Yeah, you're right, on the house. She put a marker on the house. And that's it was an emotional scene because I think at one point Epstein possesses Tick and Tick yells out all these just hateful things to Letty. And Letty, like, you know,
she did not back down.
She didn't. Listen, that girl.
She put out her whole chest and she was like, no, come on, let's do this.
Yeah.
We are going to do this. I'm going to take you down.
Yeah. And she took him down. She took Epstein down with the help of the tortured souls that were still trapped in the house, which is kind of poignant to me.
Well, it was really beautiful. I cried.
Yeah.
I cried through the entire exorcism of Epstein. But one of the reasons why I cried was because as the tortured black souls gained control of the exorcism and gained the ability to get rid of Epstein, their bodies and their soul state began to repair. And so all of the terrible things that he inflicted on the black bodies began to heal. They like healed themselves.
Yeah.
They were whole again. It was so beautiful. Moving. Yes, because for as grotesque as he had made them, they were still able to heal themselves and to ascend in such a beautiful... I cried so much in that.
I definitely got emotional, but I couldn't fully allow myself to feel because while they're doing this exorcism, you got these 3 white guys that are trying to break into the house.
That shit was so funny though, because in the beginning of the episode, the very first thing you see is this newspaper article about 3 people disappear in the Winthrop house. Yeah. And then the first 3 people you see enter the Winthrop house is Tick, Ruby, and Letty. Yeah. And you're like, oh shit, it's gonna be those 3. And I was like, it can't be those 3, Sadina. And then it turns out it's just these like white dudes who couldn't torture them enough with their busting their own cars. Yeah. They came and broke into the house to like actually hunt them down. And then the ghosts got that shit was so good.
So I couldn't concentrate on the exorcism because I was like, what's going on with these 3 idiots?
Very Three Stooges too. Yeah. They were bumbling about trying to I loved that though.
Yeah, I mean, just okay. The main story was Letty buying the house. You know, Ruby kind of warns her against it. Ruby finds out that Letty tells Ruby, oh, I used it with the inheritance I got from mom. Ruby is really upset because Letty definitely wasn't there when the mom died. But the whole thing is that Letty didn't get the money from her mom's inheritance. She actually got it from Christina, who we find out survived the house fire in Artem, which rude.
I mean, I think by this point, I was even starting to suspect her as as the super villain.
Yeah.
But also, I really kind of liked Christina because she was so calculating.
She was very cold.
But she felt, because well, initially you thought she cared about Tick.
Mm-hmm.
She does not care about Tick.
No, she does not care about it. At this point, she's always making it seem like she's helping them for some reason, but she's not helping them. No. She's doing it to further her own plot. Yeah. So she gave Letty the money because she wanted Letty to buy this house because there's this book of names that they have. And
and the Omri too.
Yeah, and Orrery, yeah.
Orrery?
Or Orrery.
It was an Omri.
I thought it was Orrery. Google.
Oh, no, you're right. It's Orrery.
Is it?
That's just because my dumbass wrote down an M.
Well, I wrote slog off, okay?
No, you know what I did? I took the 2 R's in Orrery and it became an M in my notes. That's what happened. And because I am dyslexic. Oh my god, I'm so dumb.
That's too funny. Christina gave Letty the money because she wanted her to buy Winthrop House. There's this thing called a book of names that Christina she has, but there's missing pages. And she believes that the missing pages are inside Winthrop House, as well as an orrery, which is a device that...
It's a celestial device that, it shows the alignment and rotation of the planets in the system. Which you find out there's an extra planet on it, or an extra moon or sun or something. That was weird.
That was really weird, and I was like, I need more information on that.
I think that calls back to some Lovecraft Country somewhere where there's there's a hidden planet in the shadow of the sun or something. Yeah. And, it happens to just rotate at the same constant.
So we find out the real reason why Christina is doing that, because it's not because she's being nice.
Right. Not out of the goodness of her heart.
Yeah. And now this wasn't a major part of the story, but I felt like it needed to be said because it does further the plot. Montrose and Tick, they aren't real prevalent in the episode, but we find out that they don't share the real story behind George's death with Hippolyta and Diana.
Oh, and Hippolyta knows. She knows something is up.
Yeah, because she's a smart woman.
Yeah. Well, we gotta end with that episode. The cops came during a noise complaint, but the noise complaint wasn't from the cars. No. It was the white people calling them on the house party.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay, whatever. So, but the police come and try to knock out this house party, but the police get attacked by a Shoggoth. That's kind of important later because Jennifer helped me figure out what had happened later in another episode, and that is important. Yeah. The 4th episode, the big things that you gotta look at are... Okay, so I was doing my due diligence and researching some other interpretations of this episode, and a lot of people were saying that the framing and the secret society type stuff was sort of a callback to Indiana Jones or the Goonies for Black people, and I felt like that didn't do it justice because it just meant that they were just whitewashing sort of the interpretation. I was thinking no, there's got to be more to that. So the more I looked into the Skull and Bones, the Order, apparently Yale's The Order is rumored to have an Indiana Jones Goonies tomb type thing where they hide big pieces of American history or wealth or whatever, but apparently the Yahima, the Two-Spirit, was based on the rumor that they have Geronimo's body mummified, protecting part of their treasure.
Wow.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, Geronimo is a native historical figure of significance. And the Order is rumored to have his body, which is grotesque on so many levels. So while there was a lot of visual allusions to Indiana Jones, the Goonies, I feel like it did it disservice to whitewash it as it was such and such for Black people. Yeah. I feel like the correlation to these very insidious white supremacist groups were really the focal point of them entering those spaces and taking something from them. Yeah, I just felt more comfortable with that view. But those are the notes I took away from that.
So in episode 4, we get a lot of struggle with Montrose. He's really having a hard time with wanting to help Tick on this journey and also trying to protect him and tell him to stop.
Oh, sabotage him.
Yeah. He's really struggling here, and it's very evident in this episode. And I want to go ahead and put that out there first because he figures out where the lost pages are. He doesn't want to tell him, but he tells him, and they end up going, the trio, Tick, Letty, and Montrose, head to a museum in Boston. Very much, like you said, very Indiana Jones sort of situation, trying to get to the pages. In one of the vaults that they're in, they meet an Arawak Two-Spirit named Yahima.
I think it's Yahima.
Yahima. And she basically tells him that something that we already know, Titus was a colonizer and took things and kept them for his own, and he imprisoned them in exchange for translating the Book of Names. And they've been there ever since. Yeah. Because he didn't let them go, because why would he? They help Yahima escape, only for Montrose to friggin' kill them afterwards because he doesn't want Tick to go any further in this journey.
Yeah, he's worried that Tick is good. Although I feel like that was such a useless move on Montrose's part because Tick, he saved Yahima and brought her with him because Letty was like, leave them there. They are resurrected, mummified, whatever. Yeah. And Tick was like, they're a prisoner.
Right.
They are a slave to this group.
Yeah.
Just like my people were. Just like we still are.
Yeah.
To this whole movement. We're still being used like pawns. And so he brought Yahima with them. And I feel like Montrose killing them was such a moot point because Tick, while he could have benefited from Yahima's knowledge, from Yahima's history, his main goal for bringing Yahima with him was to rescue them, to save them. To liberate them. And Montrose just all over. Just
he did.
He
makes so many bad choices in this show. But I understand it because he made it in the protection for his son. Yeah, so I get it a little bit. Wrong choice, dude, but I understand. We also get Christina trying to move up the ranks of the Chicago Order. But again, she's a white female with a bunch of white males. So obviously she doesn't have the advantage here.
Well, I think that in this episode too, she's being stalked by the police.
Yeah.
Correct? And she goes off frame for a moment, and then the next person that comes out of frame is William.
And you're like, what the hell?
Yeah, and at first I was like, is he her guard dog? Does she summon him from places? Because he seems
and they're never on screen together. And that was the first time I realized, like, wait a minute. Yeah. And she's always like, oh, well, William told me this, and William's like, oh, well, Christina told me this. Yeah. So, the red flags are up. She's very much looking for the orrery, and she goes to Letty's house. This is one of my favorite scenes. She goes to Letty's house with the intention of getting inside the house. While she's very calm and collected throughout the whole thing, you kind of see her ire a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I feel like she felt like she was playing chess. Yeah. And got outmaneuvered and was a little mad, but also respected it. Yeah. Because she was like, okay, you set me back a little bit, but I still got moves up my sleeve.
Yeah, because she tries to put that foot in the house and she can't. It is so satisfying. It was so satisfying.
Because she looks so stricken, like, what could you have? And then she sees what the Haitian priestess put on. And she's like, wait, did you?
Yeah. That was a great scene played by two females, and I loved it. I loved it. It was so good. Like I said, she's looking for the orrery. She can't enter the house. She cannot find the orrery. But Hippolyta has it.
Hippolyta took it. Which was weird because it felt like the orrery wanted her to take it. Yeah. Because the way she found it was that a door opened for her.
Yeah. I was just like, how did you?
Yeah. And then she saw the orrery and she's like, that's cool. Let me take this from this friend's house. Yeah.
So, yeah, she's got the orrery, and she's also very much looking for answers regarding George's death, because, of course, she doesn't believe what Tick and Montrose told her. She knows something's up. She's smarter than what she appears to be.
She has a very analytical mind, because she investigates the orrery, which, I mean, I wouldn't have...
I was just like, oh, it's so pretty, it's gold.
Well, and it's one of those things that I'm like, oh, it's fun to play with. And like, look at the rotation and the cycles of the planets, but I definitely wouldn't have tried to work out math. No. That's why we have calculators on our phones.
Exactly. And one of the big things that we didn't talk about, but I'm just going to give you 3 sentences. William seduces Ruby. And, I don't know.
Yeah, at the end.
And they sleep together, and...
That was very, very hot, though.
It was very hot.
Partly because Wunmi Masaku is like...
Yeah.
Okay, listen. I got types. I will admit that. Yeah. Wunmi fits that type. Yeah. And that was very... While I distrusted William in every motive he had, and even the predatory look that he gave to to Ruby, that was completely bypassed on the stair scene, and I was like, that's fine.
I was like, don't do it, Ruby. Don't do it, Ruby. Oh, okay, I guess you're doing it. I'll enjoy it, I guess.
I was like, do it, Ruby. Do it, Ruby.
I was just like, I don't trust this William. His smile's too big.
Right. And I was like, get it, Ruby, just this once.
So, I mean, I love Ruby, and I just was like, you deserve better than William.
Yes.
Which, I mean, I could still attest to, even though she got him.
Yeah, but still, it was a nice scene.
Yeah.
for me.
So I guess now we're on to episode 5.
All right. So episode 5 was a cute play on words. The 5th episode is titled Strange Case. And for any of you literary nerds out there, there's the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And there's a lot of literary allusions in this episode. And I hope I caught them all. I doubt I did, but I loved every one of them. There were the poem from Four Colored Girls, which is a beautiful play, trigger warnings for suicide and things. I highly recommend it. There's also a lot of viscera that goes along with the transformation that Ruby undergoes. And some people, when I was doing my research, likened it to the American Werewolf in London. It's like very gory interpretation of the metamorphosis between the two. And then, of course, there's the Faustus exchange between Ruby and Christina in this. But there is during one of the transformations, they pull out of the scene and they focus on a TV report about Kenyan locusts going through a metamorphosis as they shed their skin and things like that. But that's a very Kafka-esque, illusion. It was riddled with them. I loved it. And,
like you hit everything on the nose.
And I gotta say, this was actually my favorite episode. This episode, I have a lot of thoughts. It's my favorite episode and only rivaled by episode 7. But there was so much back and forth between Ruby and Christina. There was so much questions of womanhood, questions of autonomy, questions of how to move through different spaces based on what your womanhood and autonomy could mean in different skin. And it's probably going to forever be my favorite episode as a woman.
I agree. So this episode was jam-packed with stuff. So I'm going to try to do the big things and then we can go into the little things. We've come out of Ruby sleeping with William, but Ruby now has the ability to use magic to become a white woman named Hillary.
When she first woke up as the white woman, I was like, wait, that's that white bitch from the village.
Yeah. So she can become this white woman and she's like going around town and they're being really nice to her, a lot of the black folks.
Which was weird because she is clearly unstable. Well, she's presented as unstable. She's confused. She's discombobulated in a way. Because
I think at one point she sees her reflection in the glass too and that really freaks her out.
Yes. And when she bumps into
the kid.
That was really upsetting.
Yeah.
Because so she bumps into a young black man on the street. And by young, I mean a child, y'all.
Yeah,
like a child. So she bumps into him and knocks him down. And everybody comes around and starts harassing him.
Yeah.
For having the nerve to come into such close contact. Hey, baby.
Hey.
And the police even come and they like harass this child for daring to share the sidewalk with a white woman who is only in a shirt and has wild ass hair and is gibberish basically, and they blame him.
They're very, are you okay, ma'am? And she's clearly not okay. But it was so disturbing. And after she gets over this initial shock and she talks to William about it,
well, because the police take her back to her house. He's like, your husband is so worried. He said that you're out missing. And she's like, that's not my husband. And they're like, okay. And they put her back in the car and they take her. And she's trying desperately to get away from the cops and from William. And they're like, no, it's fine. Like, just go back. And that's where you kind of see that disconnect between like what autonomy actually means even as a white woman. That she's being brought back to, for all the cops know, her abuser.
And they're taking her. They're taking her. And so after she gets through the initial shock and whatever, she tests the waters as a white woman and she goes to the department store that she wanted to initially work for. She ends up being named the manager with no experience.
I don't even think she had an interview, really.
She barely had an interview.
That manager, the hiring manager, was a bit of a creep, and he was like, yeah, sure, we'll take you.
Manager. And so she kind of like flexes almost a little bit as a white woman. She shows a little bit of niceness to one of the black employees. She finds out that the only reason the black employee is there is because they need to fill the quota.
Well, she becomes bitter at that point, though, because the one black employee that is there interviewed on a whim, whereas Ruby had tried multiple times.
Yeah, and she'd been working, taking like typing tests and stuff to really get this job. And I'm just gonna go back into the rest of the story because I just don't want to go into my feelings about this one. We end up finding out that her boss is just, again, another disgusting brute. And he's just a disgusting brute. And throughout the whole process of her experiencing life as a white woman, which I think that's what a lot of it was her experiencing life as a white woman, turning back into herself, and then choosing to go out as a white woman afterwards to just kind of
have that accessibility.
Yeah, to have have that accessibility and assess that the power that she never really had as a Black woman. We also find out that Christina is in fact William and William is Christina, which made sense. I don't know why I didn't put it together.
Yeah, I didn't suspect it until that frame where she went out of frame and seconds later William was in frame, and I was like, that's a little weird.
Yeah, it was weird.
Especially since Christina didn't show back up on frame, because I expected her to show up behind his shoulder and be like, that's right, guard dog, go get those guys.
Yeah,
but she never showed back up.
No, and so it was like, why didn't we think about this? But okay.
So let's talk a little bit about the dynamic that Ruby and Christina have.
Yeah.
Because they start off very much in a weird tense position where they appear to know that they are using one another and that they're okay with that, and that it is a cornerstone of their now relationship. They fight about Christina's access as a white woman. They fight about Christina's vision of what her privileges get her.
Yeah.
They fight about what Ruby's limitations are. They fight about a lot of stuff, or they argue in these things. But one of Ruby's comebacks to Christina was, the only thing white women are disillusioned with is themselves. And I feel like that explained why Christina is who she is when she's with Ruby, because it isn't until it is revealed that Christina is William that Christina begins to change. She also is wearing men's clothes now. There's no pretense to her femininity anymore, but she's also kind of stopped pretending that she's helping Tick or Letty for their own good. She's very much lets Ruby know, under no uncertain terms, I was denied access to the privileges of William and Samuel because I'm a woman. Even though she clearly had better control, she probably had more depths to her powers as well, but she was denied any access to that world because she was a woman. And she came off to me as the person who was going to burn down the system if she couldn't benefit from it.
Yes, I got that a lot from her. And like, she was always very calm with how she spoke, but I could feel the anger writhing within.
That like very ice rage. You know, there's people who have explained that type of persona as Iceland, the big chunk of ice, but it's literally a volcano. She had this boiling rage at the system that she could not take advantage of.
And she was clearly the very best of all of the people before her within the organization. She's very clearly the best of it. So I almost feel like you get some empathy for her in this episode.
Yeah, I gotta say, I begrudgingly really liked Christina against a lot of my better judgment.
Me too! She became very likable, and I judge myself because I like her, because I didn't realize I would like her so much.
Yes. While I would not condone her motives or her actions, I on some level understand wanting to abolish the system that not only holds you up but infantilizes you and strips away your autonomy for your own good. You know? And the rage that you feel as a woman, even as a white woman, the rage that you feel at that, I don't condone sacrificing other women and their access, because let's be clear here, if your feminism is not intersectional, including trans, you're not feminist. And I feel like Christina was the epitome of who, oh God, I read this while I was studying my degree. There was this argument that white suffragists would use with their fathers, their husbands, to convince them that they deserve the right to vote because the black male vote was on the rise. And they were like, you would give black men a vote before you would give your daughter the vote? Why would you do that? The horror of it all. And the injustice of it all. And that was very Christina.
It was, because when she talked about Tick and the fact that he got access, she was so disgusted.
She was so bitter. She was real bitter that yet another man, and God forbid a man of color, got access to something she would always be denied. Christina's complicated, and I don't like her, but I really like her, and I don't condone her, but she's complicated.
So now, Ruby and Christina was a big part of the episode. Ruby ends up as Hillary, seduces the manager, her boss, and she takes out her rage on him. Her rage against, I guess, white people in general. And
because she caught him harassing the black woman that he had hired. Oh God, he said some nasty things about her. When he was in the attempts of rape, he said some foul things to the woman denying him.
And his death was very graphic. It was hard to watch, even though he had it coming. It was very hard to watch. it was just really hard. But not because I felt for him, but because I felt for Ruby. And the actress who played Ruby, her name. Wunmi. Now, not to be sidetracked by some of the other things that happened in the episode, because there were a couple other things. Letty and Tick were kind of there, but not really. They were just busy trying to decipher the pages.
And they have some weird hot and cold thing going on.
Yeah.
Because think feels uncomfortable about taking her virginity.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I actually didn't believe their relationship most of the time.
Me either.
I think that, and later we'll find out that he clicked better with Gia than he did with Letty. I feel like Letty and him were too much. If Christina is Iceland, then they are active volcanoes.
Yeah.
But you can't have two active volcanoes together. Yeah. That's not a relationship.
Yeah. They didn't mesh well.
No.
But they were there. They were doing their stuff. But we got to see a side of Montrose we never saw. His sexuality was spotlighted, where we found out that he was gay and he's in a relationship. And he sort of comes to terms with being a gay black man in the 50s. And, he kind of explores this shame he felt with it, which you shouldn't feel shame. You shouldn't feel shame for being who you are. But, and I'm kind of sad that was put into the same episode as Ruby, because I felt like Ruby deserved her own episode with no one else. Yeah. But I was glad for that because it kind of helped me deal with the roughness that was the ending of this episode with Ruby killing that manager guy. It was a great episode. It was by far my favorite one as well.
Yeah. I think that episode will, how like American Horror Story, there's seasons that you will always love over any of the others. And some of the seasons you kind of struggle to get through. Yeah. Because you got to finish them for whatever reason. Yeah. That was this episode. I didn't struggle with the series. Yeah. But this episode will always stand out as, if you have to sell someone on this series, you sell them on episode 5.
I agree. I openly struggled with this series. I tell you guys all the time, I was very, very uncomfortable, which for me, that's great with horror because I really appreciate the uncomfortableness that I experience, because obviously there's something that I'm not dealing with.
Right. It makes you question a lot. And those questions, so Jennifer started watching Evil on Netflix, and I love that series. We'll talk about it at some point, but what I loved about it and what I loved about this episode, it's the same thing, that they bring up a lot of questions internally that maybe you didn't realize you had or that you would struggle with when they came to the surface. And so you're constantly thinking about those questions, what the characters did, why you think those motives were there, and how they reflect in yourself. I have a lot of problems with Christina, and I think part of it maybe because I'm a very calculating person. I'm not necessarily cold.
No.
But I can be like Iceland. My sisters know that I'm fairly chill up until you need to call me out for something. And then you call me out for something and I will burn down everything that is harming them. Scorched earth, all gone, no survivors. Don't come to me unless you need a scorched earth solution. So I have a lot of complicated feelings about Christina.
Yeah.
I have a lot of complicated feelings about Christina and Ruby's relationship because, and we'll talk about it in the next episode, there was a big part of me that rooted for their relationship.
Me too. And I was surprised by it because I just kept thinking, and again, we'll get into it more in the next episode, but I just kept thinking like Ruby is so good that maybe that would rub off on Christina almost.
Well, Ruby is so good for Christina.
Yeah.
Because Christina seemed to reevaluate. I'll definitely be talking about it in episode 8, but there are things that Ruby did for Christina and there are things that Christina did for Ruby.
Yeah.
Christina liberated Ruby. Ruby thawed Christina a little.
She did.
And man, there was just a part of me, I am not a romantic person, but there was a part of me that really wanted them to work out, even though I knew they wouldn't.
Yeah.
And even though I knew it was toxic. And even though I knew it couldn't happen, I was just like, please let there be a universe where these two could take their relationship and decide that was worth running away from everything else they were caught up in.
Yeah.
It didn't happen.
I wanted that so bad for them too. I have never rooted for a couple like that since Jon Snow and Daenerys. And look what that did to me, so I'm just saying. But I rooted for them too. Just like you said, like against all of my better judgment and all of my know-how. Just for some reason I wanted them to
really work.
Yeah, and it was whatever. Before we ended, I want to read a couple things that Wunmi said about the episode. Because, like I said, I paid a lot of attention to, I felt a lot of things based on how the actors portrayed themselves. And it was really hard. So this is basically what she says in regards to the episode as a whole. I definitely think it sticks with her, and I think by her she means Ruby. I mean, she still is a black woman from the south side of Chicago living in a world that's not welcoming. A world that's not built for her. How can the rage ever cease? I feel rage, and this is 2020. I feel a connection to her, and so much time has passed and not enough has changed. And I think like that sums up the whole like series of Lovecraft, honestly, because it's just, we're in 2021 and some of this stuff is still happening, and why is it still happening?
We'll definitely talk more about it in the next episode, but this is the best we could do for y'all. Break it into 2 parts.
Yeah.
Because, as you can tell, I got a little hype. I let things run off at the mouth because I get real mad about what I perceive to be injustices. I think on the personality alignment chart, I'm a chaotic good or something like that. I'm one of those where I view a lot of society's rules as suggestions.
Yeah.
And I'm going to live by them as best I can, only for as long as they benefit me. And once I decide that they either no longer benefit me or they are outright wrong, I will subvert them at every turn. Or I will manipulate them to benefit me. Just know that this is the best we can do with what we have.
And I would suggest you watch this show.
Especially in preparation for the next episode where we talk about it. You have 2 weeks.
It's worth the watch.
We will continue.
We will continue.
With Lovecraft Country in episode 6?
Yep, episode 6.
We hope you guys come back for that ride because, y'all, there's a lot we got to cover in the next 5 episodes.
I mean, you think that was a lot that you experienced. There's more to come.
Yeah, I will say that I think the next episode would be a little shorter than this one.
I think so.
But not by much.
No.
I think that's because we are getting towards the climax and the fall of the movement of the storyline, and it's all coming to a head, and resolutions are coming. We got our big reveals of Christina and William.
Yeah.
Things are starting to play out, so we'll wrap up, and hopefully we have not butchered Lovecraft Country.
I hope not.
Especially as people who cannot view it in the entirety of how it is perceived by people in the Black community.
Yeah.
Hope to see you guys next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. If you liked listening to us ramble on about horror, subscribe to our podcast and tell your friends. And if you would like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Instagram or Facebook at LLOTL Podcast.
Check out our website by going to lastlibraryontheleft.com. Be sure to visit our About Us page to discover our 2 truths and a lie. Or, if you'd like to send us an email, you can reach us at somethingwicked@lastlibraryonTheLeft.com.